I think you're good.
So you love making mistakes.
Yeah,
You said
yeah.
that, but what's been the favorite mistake you've ever made?
The biggest mistake that I've ever made.
Or favorite?
Or my favorite, mistake that I've ever made. Again, I'll give you a sports example, but I could give you a science example as well. I tend to be very trusting when people say, let's like do this or that thing in like a bike riding, whatever. And then people do things that are not safe. And I'm like, I know this is not good, but I'll just go along. And the next thing I'm in the hospital. and I even knew it beforehand. I was literally thinking like, I should now stop doing this and like take a turn here, just let them, and I don't do it. And the result is more often than not that something happens, right? So when that alarm bell goes off, I should listen to it. And I'd actually do most of the time, otherwise I'd probably be a wreck. But I don't listen to it always, even though very often, there's that voice in my head that says, this is not wise. And I do it anyway. And that happens also in science sometimes. You think that a project could take you somewhere, but you have a misgiving about it somehow, but you do it anyway. But then you actually figure out later, you talk to someone and you've invested some time in it, and they tell you, well, I could have told you that so-and-so's theorem says that this is impossible. And it's like, oh God, if I had known. And then I check it, of course, and I say, yeah, you were right. So forget this thing. I'm not going to spend any more time, trying to prove what's impossible to prove. So it happens, right? But again, the cost of this is smaller than the cost of like avoiding doing anything because you're worried, that it might not be the right thing to do. So I say better make the mistakes and end up wasting some time once in a while than to never make any mistakes but never, get anything real done. So.
Is there something, you've done many things about many different areas, but is there something that you've been dreaming about doing for a long time, but for some reason you haven't get to doing that?
Oh yeah, we all have these things. Like, actually you were speaking of the Webb Space Telescope, right? So, and actually as a graduate student, I worked in an area called astrochemistry, where you measure molecules that could show up in outer space, and then you go to radio telescopes and see if the molecule is there and detect them. And but I gave up on that and did other things, later. And but now actually one of my dreams is I want to see if I can publish a paper in astrophysical journal someday. So, and the way I imagine I would do it is, but I haven't had the time. But I will take the time at some point, right? At some point I'm going to go like, okay, this is it. I'm going to say no to this thing, and I'm going to spend the time on doing that. But astronomers, I think in particular, are really good about data sharing. So all of these telescopes, all the data is out there, and it's available publicly, actually, because it's government-funded data. And so you can actually go online and access the real primary scientific data that also astronomers work with. Of course, you might do it a little bit later, right? The people who sort of directly go to it. But there's so much data to mine in there that even if you do it years later, there's probably new stuff that you can find in the data. So the way I imagine doing this is that I'll find some time over summer at some point, and I'll mine those databases with some problems in mind. I'm a hobby astronomer anyway, so I have some ideas of things that might be interesting to look at. And then maybe I can actually do something that's new enough that it would actually be worth a publication in astrophysical journal. So we'll see if that ever happens, but you never know, right?